All right, greetings. Welcome to the Ottawa Senators history. Now, when you look at the Ottawa Senators history in my magic Bible book of the 2017 Guide and Record book, it is a 25-year history. But if you're going to get into it, when the Ottawa Senators were awarded their franchise in the early 90s, in 91, the original logo was not this, or the Senator that came before that, and it certainly wasn't this. It was the Parliament building, was what they were going to use for their logo. And then somebody talked some sense to them and said, hey, I got a pack of Trojan condoms here, and I think this would make a better logo than the bloody Parliament building. And somebody took that joke seriously, so now you have a condom wrapper for your logo, which is fine. Better than the Parliament building. But the Senators have managed to create a decent team and a decent history in the last 25 years, even though they haven't been able to win the big game. Now I'm using my Century of Hockey book for discussions on the Ottawa Senators and the original Ottawa Senators, because there's not much point just talking about this year's Ottawa Senators and this incarnation of the Ottawa Senators without discussing the originals. All right, the birth of the original Ottawa Senators. More than a century before the franchise would be reintroduced to the NHL as an expansion team, the original Ottawa Senators were formed at the Montreal Winter Carnival in 1883. Initially dubbed the Ottawa Hockey Club, it was later nicknamed the Generals before adopting the Senators moniker in 1902. In 02-03, that marked the first year of a dynasty in which the Stanley Cup was claimed by the team playing in the nation's capital. Fans had come to label the team the Silver Seven instead of its official name. At the time, some of the players were paid with silver, contravening their supposed amateur status. And the rules of the sport called for a rover, a seventh man on the ice. Ottawa swept the Rat Portage Thistles in a two-game series to claim its first Stanley Cup. 2 years later, the Silver Seven accepted a challenge from Dawson City, Yukon, whose players trekked some 6,400 kilometers across country by, among other means, dog sled to play for the coveted trophy. But Ottawa gave the visitors a rude welcome in the first game with a 9-2 trouncing. In Game 2, Silver Seven forward one-eyed Frank McGee was unstoppable. McGee scored an unbelievable 14 goals as his team coasted to a 23-2 demolition. Ottawa had its string of championships broken in 1906 before reclaiming the cup in 1909. By this time, the club's official nickname of Senators had been accepted into the mainstream. The following season saw the birth of the Professional National Hockey Association, a 7-team league that claimed 3 of the teams from the Eastern Canada Amateur Hockey Association, 2 Montreal teams, the Shamrocks and Wanderers, and Ottawa. The Senators claimed their only NHA Stanley Cup in 1910-11. This was the first season that featured 3 20-minute periods instead of 2 30-minute halves. That's how much the games played and changed. And there was no forward passing allowed in that NHL either. You had to pass back. By the fall of 1917, the Toronto Blue Shirts owner Eddie Livingstone had fallen out of favor with his Montreal counterparts. Sam Lichtenheim of the Wanderers and George Kennedy of the Canadiens. The 2 Montreal clubs, along with the Senators and Quebec Bulldogs, dissolved the NHA, leading to the formation of the National Hockey League. Ottawa went on to win 4 Stanley Cups between 1920 and 1927. The Senators' star players included goaltenders Clint Benedict and Alec Connell, defensemen King Clancy and George Boucher, and forwards Cy Denny and Frank Nyberg. The franchise was a casualty of the Great Depression of the 1930s. The team was sold to St. Louis in 1934, where it lasted 1 year as the Eagles before dissolving. So that's the birth of the original Senators. Now you fast forward, and you got yourself some snazzy new jerseys, and this is what I mean about the logo they used when they came into the NHL, which some Senators fans think they should go back to. It really doesn't matter to me. I think that's just fine. I don't have a problem with it. In the early days of the 20th century, hockey at its highest level was vibrant in the nation's capital. The original Ottawa Hockey Club, known as the Silver Seven, won 4 straight Stanley Cups, ending in 1906. Get past that because I just reviewed that. For nearly 6 decades, Ottawa was left out of the NHL circuit. The city was granted one of a dozen inaugural WHL franchises, the Nationals, in 1972, but it became the Toronto Toros the following year. Finally, in 1989, Bruce Firestone, Chief Executive Officer of Terrence Investments, assembled a bid to bring professional hockey back to Ottawa. Submitting a letter of intent with the NHL for an expansion team, he also unveiled plans to build a 22,500-seat arena in the suburb of Canada, west of the city. The Civic Center, home of the Junior 67s, was modest for its tenants but far below NHL standards. On December 6, 1990, NHL President John Ziegler granted franchises to both Ottawa and Tampa to begin play in 92-93. So I said 91. I was right in between when they were granted and when they came in. So standards grew up. But the initiative, spearheaded by Firestone, met its challenges. The Ontario Agricultural Ministry had opposed construction on the Canada farmland intended as the location for the Senators' new arena. There was also concern about vehicular congestion that the building would inevitably generate. Eventually, a compromise was reached by which Firestone agreed to reduce the capacity by 4,000, and the Ottawa Municipal Board gave their approval for construction to begin. That baffles me. Okay, 18,000 people. That's all right. 22,000. No. Give me a break. It's for the environment. No, not really. Not really. 4,000 isn't, a huge. Anyways, whatever. In hockey-related manners, the team hired Mel Bridgman to be its first NHL general manager. And oh, what a job Mel Bridgman did, eh, Ottawa fans? Oh boy, what a team he put together. Rick Bowness was the first coach. While awaiting construction of the new arena named the Palladium, the Senators played their first 3.5 seasons at the Civic Center. On October 8, 1992, the newly incarnated Senators played their first game hosting the Montreal Canadiens. Stanley Cup banners from the first edition of the team, plus a banner commemorating the retired number 8 of Frank Finnegan, were raised to the rafters. Ottawa didn't disappoint the 10,500 fans in attendance, winning 5-3. Neil Brady got the Senators' first goal with a tap-in at the side of the net. A power play marker, the Montreal goalie Patrick Roy had no chance of stopping. And boy, was that an ugly, ugly, ugly season. They won 10 games that year. It was ugly. Great rivalries, Ottawa versus Toronto. And I want to preface this by saying I'm sorry to fans of the Senators for the following reading, because the Ottawa-Toronto rivalry was pretty one-sided. There may be only 2 NHL teams in the province of Ontario, but the Senators and Maple Leafs are idolized by polarized fans who are just as different as the Peace Tower from the CN Tower. Since the new incarnation of the Senators entered the league in 92-93, the team has won 1 President's Trophy and advanced to the 1 Stanley Cup Finals. The Leafs have not been able to boast either accomplishment in that time. However, when it comes to head-to-head playoff battles, Toronto has a decisive edge. The two provincial rivals first tangled in the playoffs in 2000, like I'm tangling with my tongue today. Steve Thomas capped off a thrilling Game 5 overtime at Air Canada Centre, converting a 2-on-1 feed from Sergei Berezin to give the Leafs a 3-2 lead in the series. Toronto eliminated Ottawa in the next game. In 2001, the Senators were expected to exact revenge in a second consecutive first-round matchup against the rivals, but the Leafs pulled off an unexpected 4-game sweep. Matt Sundin and Corey Cross had overtime goals in games 1 and 3 respectively. That's when I started laughing about the matchups between Ottawa and Toronto. I started joking that Toronto was in their heads, that Ottawa would see Toronto and would freak out right off the bat. No, Shadow, get down. Dip, 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 dip. Nope. Nope. You're going to knock that off. Nope. Not knocking that off. Sorry for the blur. Sorry, just Shadow is nosing around where he shouldn't be. This is water. That'll shut people up. It's not water. Doesn't matter. The teams played to a grueling 7-game series in 2002. Daniel Alfredsson earned the wrath of the Air Canada Centre faithful in the 5th game after hitting Darcy Tucker from behind just before scoring the game-winning goal. Ottawa had a chance to clinch the series on home ice, but with the Senators holding a 2-0 lead, defenseman Rich Persson drew a boarding major on Toronto's Ty Domi. Yes, Richard Persson, a Swede, got a major penalty against Ty Domi. The Leafs rallied on the strength of 2 power play goals to force the 7th game, which they won to take the series. It was like Ottawa went, we can win. Oh, shit. What? We can't win? We're the Senators. 3 weeks later, during an on-ice brawl, Ottawa defenseman Zdeno Chara used his tremendous size to throw Brian McCabe around like a rag doll. It was funny. Within a week, the team staged a rematch. Oh, wait. The Britter feud reached a peak in 2004. On January 8th, Alfredsson further enticed boos from the Toronto fans by pretending to toss his broken stick into the crowd, mocking countryman Matt Sundin. The Leafs captain had been suspended from one game for throwing a stick in the stands in the previous outing. And then Toronto rallied for an overtime win after several Senators were felled by the flu bug. Leafs forward Owen Nolan simply shrugged off his opponent's ailment with an unsympathetic boo-hoo. In the playoffs that year, Joe Nieuwendyk scored not one but two very stoppable goals on Ottawa goalie Patrick Lalime to win Game 7, clinching the Leafs' 4th straight playoff win versus the Senators. So let's talk about something good that happened to Ottawa, shall we? Yeah, the Ottawa-Toronto feud has been ugly. And with what Ottawa has and with what Toronto's building, I'm scared that when the playoffs happen, and they'll meet in the playoffs again, that we could see Toronto knock them out again. Great run, foul end. After years of talented squads that underachieved in the playoffs, the Senators finally broke through in 06-07. That's right. They didn't have to go through Toronto to do it either, I don't believe. Our roles were really specified on that team, said Joe Corvo, who patrolled the Sens blue line for 76 games that year. We had a scoring line that we depended on heavily, and thereafter everybody did their job to a T. That scoring line was the trio of Jason Spezza between wingers Daniel Alfredsson and Danny Heatley. In the regular season, Heatley was 4th in NHL scoring with 105 points, while Spezza and Alfredsson each racked up 87. The Senators scored 206 goals in total, second only to the Buffalo Sabres, who had 208. The team Ottawa knocked out of the Eastern Final was Buffalo. But for the Senators, the run started in the second half. Everything becomes automatic, Corvo said. Guys are playing the same way every game, and you know that they're going to bring that effort. It turned into a well-oiled machine, and we took that momentum into the playoffs. With Ray Emery holding fort in net, the Sens leaned on their big line in the postseason. Spezza, Heatley, and Alfredsson led the NHL in playoff scoring with remarkable synchronicity. Each player tallied 22 points in 20 games. The team lost just once per series in the first 3 rounds against Sidney Crosby's Penguins, Martin Berdeur's Devils, and the loaded Sabres squad featuring Daniel Briere. Yeah, this was after Toronto falling out of the playoffs. So, yeah, I don't even know why I said that. That was after the lockout. Led by behemoth Chris Pronger, the Ducks outmatched Ottawa in the finals, dispatching the Sens in 5 games. They bullied us, Corvo said. That was their game plan. If you watched any film of us, you'd know we weren't the biggest hitting team or the most physical team. They played their game plan well and frustrated us, and they did. The Ducks were as close to Broad Street bullies as you're going to get in recent history. And I was very upset with that final. And that's part of where my hatred for Anaheim started. And yeah, it was ugly. Ugly. Feuds. So Daniel Alfredsson versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I got into this, so let me see if there's anything different. This is key. Alfredsson is booed relentlessly every time he touches the puck at the Toronto Air Canada Center. He has been ever since the controversial hit he administered to Darcy Tucker in the 2002 playoffs. The series and score were tied in 2. In the waning moments, Alfredsson nudged Tucker from behind, depending from which fan perspective you viewed the hit. Seconds later, while Tucker's lying prone on the ice, Alfredsson proceeded to score the game-winning goal. In today's game, it would have been a penalty, Alfredsson said. At the time, the officials, probably didn't call it a penalty as it was late in the 3rd period of the playoffs. So think about that. Now, I've had some heat for recent hits and my views on them. Hits change in whether or not they're penalties. The Alfredsson hit at the time, considered, nah, that's clean, it's borderline. Now would be a penalty, definitely, against the Leafs. 2 seasons later, Alfredsson gave Leafs supporters another reason to jeer him. That's when he threw the stick into the crowd. It wasn't planned. Alfredsson said, I had broken 4 sticks in the morning and had 3 more in the game. It just happened to be in Toronto. Alfredsson thought the incident was blown way out of proportion and said Sundin thought it was funny. And I believe that. From seeing Matt Sundin during his time in Vancouver, I believe he had a good sense of humor, and I don't think he would have taken that personally or wanted to get out on the ice and beat him up. Doesn't seem like something he would have done. Despite all the constant catcalls from Leafs throng to this day, Alfredsson, who spent last season with the Detroit Red Wings, does not harbor any ill will towards Toronto fans. Toronto fans are knowledgeable, Alfredsson said. They cheer for their team. I have no problem with their fans. They will be fans that dislike me to a certain level. When I walk in Toronto, I feel nothing but respect towards me. There's nothing that bothers me. So, and what I like is the jersey Alfredsson's wearing there with the gold around the sleeves. I love that jersey. That's a fantastic jersey I haven't seen online on eBay, and if I ever do, it's mine. Oh, and in answer to a recent comment, I think it was Sean Avery who asked if I had the Hamilton Bulldogs. No, but I'd actually love to have the Hamilton Bulldogs. I know people mean it as sarcasm, but I would love to have all of the classic jerseys. Those big, thick wool sweaters. Fuck yeah, that'd be great. All right. Now, for final article, before I get to my feelings on Senators. Bigger villain, okay, by Ottawa fan standards. Is it Yashin or is it Heatley? There's a tradition in Ottawa of an ugly divorce between them and star players. Spezza kind of got out of that. I don't feel that same hatred towards Spezza from Ottawa fans, even though the trade was very one-sided and Ottawa didn't get a whole lot out of it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where people who watch this video fall on this issue. Who do they hate more, Alexei Yashin or Danny Heatley? My vote's for Heatley. I can't stand Heatley. Yashin, to me, Yashin was more a flop in the playoffs, and Heatley just had such an ego. Such an ego. Bigger villain. All right. On the Heatley side, Bruce Garriock wrote this one. Now, this is a tough question, but the answer to who has been Ottawa's biggest villain over the years is Danny Heatley over Alexei Yashin. Why? Because nobody really understands why Heatley, 2 years after scoring 50 goals and being rewarded with a massive contract extension, wanted out in the first place. In the case of Ottawa's vitriol towards Yashin, it was clear from both sides it was time to move on. The contract disputes aside, by the time Yashin came back to live up to the first year of his deal, this was Daniel Alfredsson's team, and it was clear the skilled Russian wasn't part of the future. GM Marshall Johnson had made an incredible trade with the New York Islanders in 2001 that got the Senators Zdeno Chara and the draft pick used to select Jason Spezza. When Yashin returned to Ottawa as a visiting player with the Isles, you never saw the outpouring of disdain that Heatley received when he came back for his first time with the San Jose Sharks. A group of fans threw their number 15 jerseys with Heatley's name on the back on the ice, and he was booed every time he touched the puck. Using the excuse of a diminished role under coach Corey Closton, Heatley took plenty of heat for his trade request, and the hate only got hotter when he tied the hands of the organization by refusing a deal to Edmonton. Edmonton fans should be happy about that, though. Come on, Oilers fans, you guys should be happy you never had Heatley. So upset was owner Eugene Melnyk, he launched a grievance to get $4 million bonus back from Heatley. The two ended up settling, but fans will never forgive. One of the few times I agree with Melnyk, kind of, I don't know, filing a grievance with a guy because he won't accept a trade is kind of, just trade him somewhere else. It's just easier. Making me agree with Melnyk feels just, all right. Here's the other side, written by Matt Larkin. Danny Heatley requested a trade out of Ottawa. He also carried a tumultuous and tragic past from Atlanta, but there's no way he's Senators' top villain. That's Alexei Yashin in a landslide. A single trade request is nothing compared to years of headaches Yashin caused Ottawa. He held out and demanded to have his contract renegotiated before 95-96, so he'd become the team's highest paid player. That was a dick move. There's no doubt that was a dick move. He demanded another raise, refused to honor the final year of his contract, and asked for a trade after 98-99 too. Yeah, that was a dick move as well. The Senators wouldn't move him. They stripped him of his captaincy instead, and when he still refused to report to the team, they suspended him for the entire 99-2000 season. Yashin demanded a new contract 3 times in 5 years. Worse yet, in 98-99, Yashin had pledged to donate $1 million to Ottawa's National Arts Centre. The NAC later learned the gift was contingent on Yashin's parents collecting $425,000 in consulting fees. Naturally, the NAC balked, and Yashin withdrew his donations. Okay, that's a dick move. Yashin left the Sens on a low note too. They were favored against Toronto in round 1 of the 2001 playoffs, but the Leafs swept them with Yashin managing just 1 assist. He blew off the team meeting after the loss. That was the end of his days as a Senator. He did net Jason Spezza and Zdeno Chara in a trade, but Yashin hardly deserves credit for that. He was talented, but a perpetual villain during his tenure, whereas Heatley only earned villain status in Ottawa on his way out. Okay, that's a that's actually a really persuasive argument. I guess they both win. If you're an Ottawa fan, let me know in the comments below who you think the bigger villain is. And I don't count. Okay, I know what I predicted before the season, and I stand by that. But I don't count. You can't make me the villain. It's not allowed. The channel forbids it. Well, I forbid it. I don't actually speak for the entire channel. I can't. But yeah, in terms of villains, I guess they both win. I really couldn't stand Heatley, though. To me, Yashin was more deluded than a villain. He actually thought he was fantastic. He thought he was amazing. That the team was, his, and that he was the reason that they were doing anything. And yeah, he really wasn't. All right, so that being said, let's get into career leaders. This is, with Ottawa, this is interesting because, of course, this doesn't take into account the Senators from before. The Senators are really a tale of 2 teams in the same city with the same name. And these colors are Ottawa colors. You look at their football team, and it's the same. And I believe the Ottawa 67s are red and black as well. I'm pretty sure they're red and black, which is good because those are my favorite colors. Games played leaders, Chris Phillips had 1179, Daniel Alfredsson had 1178, Chris Neal 988, so he's going to play 1,000 games, which is crazy. Chris Neal, I make a lot of comments about how Chris Neal isn't an NHLer anymore, which isn't really fair. I guess my point is, I think on a better team, Neal wouldn't make it, but it doesn't matter. Neal getting to 1,000 games is a testament for his ability to play bottom 6, for his ability to play physical, and for his character. He's a big character guy. Wade Redden, 838 games. Radek Bonk, 689. Jason Spezza, 686. Mike Fisher, 675. Alexei Yashin, 504. Erik Karlsson's closing in a 500. He's got 495 as of November 17th, 2016. And Chris Kelly, 479, who was reacquired in the offseason. No, don't do that. No, don't do that either. Let's see. Goals. Daniel Alfredsson, 426. Jason Spezza, 251. Alexei Yashin, 218. Marian Hossa, 188. Danny Heatley, 180. Mike Fisher, 167. Radek Bonk, 154. Sean McEachern, 142. I like Sean McEachern. Very versatile forward. Milan McCulloch, 115. Chris Neal, 112. Which, again, Chris Neal is a role player. Having scored 112 goals is pretty cool. Assists. Pretty much the same cast of characters. Chris Phillips, 217 assists, based on the fact he played so many games. He scored 217 assists. Points, Alfredsson leads the way with 1,108. Spezza second with 687. Yashin had 491. Wade Redden, 410. Erik Karlsson's sitting tied with Bonk for 399. Hossa, 390. Danny Heatley, 362. Mike Fisher, 348. Sean McEachern, 304. I would think before Karlsson's career's over, he's second on that list. Power play goals. Daniel Alfredsson, 131. Jason Spezza, 90. Alexei Yashin, 77. Danny Heatley, 68. Wade Redden is 51, behind Marian Hossa's 54. Radek Bonk, 45. Martin Havlat, 40. Sean McEachern, 39. And Mike Fisher's 35. Shorthanded goals. Daniel Alfredsson leads there too, 25. Mike Fisher, 14. Antoine Vermette, 13. Zach Smith, 10. Jean-Gabriel Pajot with 9. Milan McCulloch and Magnus Arvidsson are tied for 6th with 8. Then Sean Van Allen with 7. Three-way tie for 9th between Peter Schaefer, Dean McCammond, and Radek Bonk. Still one of the greatest names in the history of hockey is Radek Bonk. And in terms of goaltenders, there hasn't really been a goaltender that you look at in Ottawa and go, what a huge superstar. Dominik Hasek was supposed to be that when he signed there and didn't last. Their number one goaltender for wins is Patrick Lean with 146. followed up by Craig Anderson with 134. Ron Tugnut's third with 72. Then Ray Emery with 71. Damian Rhodes with 65. Brian Elliott 59. Martin Gerber 49. Robin Lehner with 30. And then Hasek has 28 for ninth place, tied with Martin Prusek. Andrew Hammond will knock Hasek and Prusek off this list by the end of the year, in all likelihood anyways. Shutouts, Patrick Lalime is number 1 with 30, followed by Craig Anderson with 21, Ron Tugnut 13, Damian Rhodes 11, Brian Elliott 9, Ray Emery 8, Dominic Hasek's tied with Yanni Herme for 7th with 5, and Andrew Hammond's tied with Martin Gerber with 4 for 9th place. Some of the greatest names in goaltending history have come through Ottawa. I love Lalime's name. Lalime is cool. Tugnut, of course, Tugger. Martin Gerber. I like Prusek. Yanni Herme, or I just called him Hermy. I gotta say, goaltenders in Ottawa, I've always sort of had an affection for, even if they aren't technically great goaltenders. Lalime was sort of like a Dan Cloutier in Vancouver in that he could do it during the regular season, but his postseason struggles overshadowed his regular season success. So that does happen, and it's a shame when it does, because Lalime was a decent goaltender. He wasn't a bad goaltender. But Craig Anderson rightfully should be number 1 on both of these lists before he retires. Anderson is a much better goaltender than he sometimes gets credit for by people, including myself. And Ottawa, at the time that I'm recording this, they're in a playoff spot. I genuinely feel they could and should make it now. It'll be interesting to see what happens. But the Senators have built a nucleus of guys who are young and hungry and seem to be really determined to play together as a team. And they're dedicated to that team. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, let me know in the comments what you think about Ottawa. Again, I'm doing this series, and I'm doing this, and I'm continuing this. I'll do it right till the end. There's been some comments on my channel about loving the series, some comments on my channel about not loving the series I'm doing. Regardless, I feel like this is a good way for younger fans to hear from an older fan, and I'm an older fan, regarding stuff that they may not have seen. And Ottawa was always frustratingly talented, skilled, usually lacking in grit. They never had an Iginla type forward. They always seem to have the skilled forwards. And at least with what they have going on now, they seem to have the potential for the grit. They seem to have the potential for the depth. And there seems to be a lot going on in Ottawa to make fans feel optimistic. Any rants I had about Eugene Melnyk, that's all off-season stuff. The season's going on right now, so I wish them the best of luck. They really are my 4th favorite team after the big 3 of Vancouver, Dallas, Boston, Vancouver, Boston, Dallas, Boston, Vancouver, Dallas, whatever order they may be in for the day. But Ottawa's solidly, 4th. They're a team that I will always cheer for in the playoffs against Montreal, against Toronto, against Buffalo, against anybody in their division, not Boston. Probably anybody in the East who's not Boston. Yeah, I guess if they're my 4th favorite and 2nd favorite in the East, that's a pretty safe bet. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments anything that you have to add about Ottawa. And tomorrow is Philly. So Flyers fans, get ready. I will be talking about the Philadelphia Flyers and my feelings regarding them as a team, as an organization, and their goalie graveyard. I may get into the goalie graveyard thing with Philly. I may look into a page that just gets into all their goaltenders, or I may just write them all down on paper. Just since 2003, since the mid-90s, all the goaltenders who've gone through Philly. It is a long list. So right now, looking at Philly, you've got Neuwirth and Mason, and the potential both of them are gone out of Philly in favor of 2 other goaltenders next year. So that goalie graveyard could just get worse. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I will talk to y'all again real soon.